They showed up. Loss at LSU, and they invented that last night.
Welcome in to episode 244 of the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball and recruiting podcast on the growing KSR Podcasts Network. The Sources Say podcast is presented by our good friends at Justice Dental. Stressed about the big game? Take advantage of their special offer for KSR listeners and protect your teeth from clenching and grinding. For a limited time, they're offering 20% off bite guards and discounted therapeutic Dysport injections. Click the link in our show notes to schedule your free consultation. Offer ends April 4th. I'm your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio. Very happy to be joined live here in Nashville. Shawn, we're here. We finally made it. It's been a long time coming down at the SEC tournament, where Kentucky is set to take on one of arguably the hottest team in the SEC in the Vanderbilt Commodores. So this is our official pregame show. Shawn, we're live in action. This is awesome, man.
Yeah, it's fantastic to be here, back in Nashville, back at the SEC tournament. Two of the hottest teams in the SEC meeting tonight. Vandy obviously had the win against Kentucky at Rupp Arena a week ago. Their only loss in the last 10 games was on the road at LSU, and they avenged that themselves here in Nashville, Bridgestone Arena last night with a massive win over LSU. Vandy is sitting on that bubble of Joe Lunardi, ESPN. They haven't moved. They're still in that next four out. A win against Kentucky, a second win against Kentucky would just continue to move them up. But it feels like a Vandy team that probably has to win the league tournament to get in. Kentucky's playing a desperate team tonight, but Kentucky has to be the more desperate team.
You know, I kind of thought that there would be a chance that against LSU, a long, athletic, talented, they have a team clearly with its flaws, but I thought earlier in the year, LSU was Vandy's one thorn in their side, and I thought there was a chance that they could go home last night and that their luck would die out at some point. I thought it could have happened last night, and they go in and they make a statement, 77-68 win over the 14 seed LSU Tigers, but a team that, for the struggles that they had earlier in the year, for whatever reason, it always worked against the Commodores. And I was just thinking that an upset was possible, but for them to respond without Liam Robbins, their best player, and continue to stack solid performances on top of solid performances against, not all great teams, but still very solid teams, there's reason to be nervous going into this matchup, I think.
There is, and we saw this matchup a year ago. In this tournament, and we know Vandy played very well, and Kentucky and everything, and there was a close game down the stretch. It feels like every time that these two teams, Kentucky and Vandy, get together, especially in recent years, Kentucky's had a lot of success in this matchup, but it's been a close game. Whether it's in Nashville, or if it's in Lexington, if it's in Nashville or the SEC tournament, if it's in Tampa, it doesn't matter. It's been a tight ball game, and Kentucky's going to get Vandy's best shot tonight. This is a Vanderbilt team that is playing for its tourney lives. Desperate teams in March or dangerous teams in March. Kentucky already in the tournament. I think projected six seed. We've seen them go to 5. We've seen them go to 6. They've been all over the place in Joe Lunardi's latest projections and every other projection. So who knows where they're going to fall? But we know that they're in. Vandy is setting foot on that floor tonight as a team that is not in the NCAA tournament. Even with another win against Kentucky, they're probably not in the NCAA tournament. They've got to win this thing, or at least probably advance to Sunday to have a chance. But they're one of the hotter teams in college basketball. Jerry Stackhouse has done an excellent job, getting a lot of praise and credit for the job that he's done at Vandy this year and in recent years. Kentucky has to come out and be the aggressor tonight. It cannot play on its heels.
And we talked to Jerry Stackhouse. We talked to Jordan Wright, who's been absolutely tremendous as of late for the Commodores. He had 15 and 15 last night against KJ Williams, one of the best individual players in the SEC. He's really stacking solid performances on top of one other for himself. And their mindset was really interesting. They asked about just kind of, a rubber match game against Kentucky. They won on your home floor. You won on their home floor. What's the mindset? What's the mentality going into this one? And it was a really interesting response because they all kind of were like, we're not really worried about Kentucky right now because we know, because they were, obviously asking about the postseason and the significance of what a win could do over Kentucky for their tournament chances. And they were like, you know what? We know we're not going to rely on chance. We're not going to rely on being on the bubble and being an at-large. They said, well, why don't we just go win the damn thing? And then that way we're automatically, and we don't even have to worry about our tournament lives because we're in. So teams with that type of desperation and that type of confidence, when you have won 9 of their last 10,
they're confident.
that's a team that is not afraid of the word Kentucky across their chest.
No, and I mean, it's a team that walked into Rupp Arena
On senior night
and beat Kentucky. And we know Cason Wallace obviously didn't play down the stretch of that game, but this is a Vandy team that is entering this matchup, whether Cason Wallace is on the floor, Cason Wallace isn't on the floor, or whoever's on the floor, that has a ton of confidence going up against Kentucky. And honestly, right now, it doesn't matter if it's Kentucky, it doesn't matter if it's Texas A&M, it doesn't matter who it is that Vandy's playing. They're playing with confidence, and they're playing. We talk about this on the show all the time, especially this time of year. You want to be playing your best basketball in late February into March. These two teams in Kentucky and Vandy, two of the better teams in the league right now, and it's no coincidence that they're in this round of the SEC tournament. Kentucky played their way here with a double bye. Vandy played their way here with a bye and a win. Look, this is a good matchup of two good basketball teams tonight. Vandy has some dudes that can do it. Mm-hmm. Kentucky needs another big night from Antonio Reeves. He was a guy that did not play well in this matchup the last time they played, but he had a really good game at Arkansas. Like, Kentucky, to me, though, it's not as much a revenge factor as it is. You can't get caught up in, Vandy beat us on senior night. You want to come out and have some revenge. That's not the case. You just want to take care of you, be playing better basketball than you were the last time this matchup happened, and then let the rest take care of itself. And if Kentucky gets that collective effort across the board that we saw at Arkansas and Fayetteville on Saturday, Kentucky's going to be just fine. But Vandy is going to – it's going to be a game of runs. Vandy's going to come clawing back. They're going to make some runs late in the game, first half, second half. Vandy's going to give everything they have to win this game, and Kentucky's just got to stay the course, trust their training, as John Calipari says, and get out here with a win in Nashville. Vandy slept in their own beds last night.
Yeah, that's a key point. How much do you think the home court advantage factor will help? Obviously, we've been down here. Kentucky fans are just out in full force. They're out at the bars last night, this morning at the KSR remote, at Tin Roof. I mean, Kentucky fans are just everywhere. But I do think that you could see a pretty solid showing tonight from Vanderbilt fans. There's an excitement around Vanderbilt basketball that I personally have never seen. And a buddy of mine that works on the Vanderbilt beat, Joey, he's kind of in new territory because he's like, he's just getting started with this, and he's like, I don't know, how to manage excitement around Vanderbilt basketball, because it's never been something that we've needed. Even earlier on in the year, the apathy was kind of there because it was just Vanderbilt basketball, and for them to continue to kind of build this resume and close out the year so strong. There's now like tangible excitement within the Vanderbilt fan base, and I think that could play into tonight's matchup as well.
Yeah, it's a Vandy team that has 4 quad 1 wins. They're 5-1 in quad 2, 5-2 in quad 3, and 5-1 in quad 4. So obviously the quad 4 loss, the 2 quad 3 losses, that's keeping them from probably being an NCAA tournament team, regardless of what happens tonight. But it's one of the hotter teams in college basketball, one of the best teams in the league. They finished the season on a heater. They were nowhere near postseason play a month ago, and they got it right at the right time. The same thing can be said for Kentucky. But you're right, there's a lot of buzz around Vandy. This may be where they're located, but this is Kentucky's town. Mm-hmm. When you look out here and you see blue across these streets, up and down Broadway, in the bars, Bridgestone Arena, that's all you see. You look out the left of your car, you see Kentucky fans. You look out the right of your car, you look up in the rearview mirror, you see Kentucky fans. You look out your windshield, they're crossing the street.
Hopefully not hitting them.
No, don't hit them. But Kentucky fans are everywhere, and Kentucky fans are excited about this opportunity. And look, this tournament, it can be in St. Louis, it can be in Atlanta, it can be in Tampa, it can be in New Orleans. It's a good tournament. There's just something about SEC basketball, Kentucky basketball, and it being in Nashville.
Kentucky opens as a 5.5-point favorite, and it immediately grows to 7.5, as much as 8. I haven't checked as of just this right second, but clearly the Vegas odds makers like the Cats' chances. And how much of that do you think has to do with Liam Robbins' absence? And I just feel like there's a fine line of, are they continuing to build momentum and playing in for him to just kind of go, okay, well, we figured out how to win without him earlier in the year because of the injury struggles that he dealt with in the past, so they know how to win without him. But how much of that has been almost like a desperation factor of almost you're just riding the energy of that kind of rallying behind him versus how long they can be a successful basketball team and play winning basketball without him.
We thought Kentucky had an advantage in that matchup on Wednesday night at Rupp Arena. They did. Oscar Tshiebwe. They went to him late. We kept asking ourselves, why are they not posting Oscar with no Liam Robbins? Why is Kentucky not exploiting that matchup and going there? I think that's going to be a focal point tonight for John Calipari. And let's also face this too. There's an advantage and there's a disadvantage. And I know Kentucky didn't know its opponent till late last night, but I'm assuming John Calipari prepared for Vandy. He prepared for LSU both. Vandy was trying to win a basketball game and then really couldn't flip the switch to Kentucky until this morning. They didn't get in the gym last night and start going over Kentucky tape. It was so late they got in the bed. So Vandy started preparing for Kentucky today. Kentucky's been probably preparing for Vandy all week to some extent. And that's probably an advantage too. You could also say that Vandy's had a game in this building, that's an advantage where Kentucky has not had a game in this building. But it's postseason basketball. It's March. It's the SEC tournament. The one advantage that Kentucky has that I think is going to push them across the finish line tonight, Rupp Arena is Rupp Arena. This arena, though, when Kentucky fans get in here and it's postseason basketball, Jack, it's a different level. These people literally put their vacation dates in to come to Nashville for the SEC tournament. This is a different group of fans that show up here. The people in the lower bowl will be on their feet. The people in the upper arena will be in their feet. And I think the BBN is what pushes Kentucky across the finish line tonight.
So we talked to Orlando Antigua after the game went final last night following Vandy's win over LSU. We did not get the head coach of the basketball team. We got the associate head coach, first press conference leading into postseason play. Make of that what you will. But we did hear from Coach O, and he did provide an update on Cason Wallace and CJ Frederick. Said both players practice full go in practice. Your thoughts on that? I have been told that the expectation is both will give it a go. How much of an impact do you think that will make, considering Cason went down 2 minutes into the second half of the last matchup?
Hasn't played since.
Has not played since, and hasn't practiced a ton since.
The key has always been for anyone with an injury under John Calipari is, did they practice or did they not practice? And that's usually the cutoff, right? We knew going into Fayetteville it was likely we weren't going to see Cason, and they got out of that. And I think this team built a ton of confidence without him. So it's not like an on-the-fly thing here. Like we've seen Antonio Reeves run the one. We've seen Jacob Toppin pitch in and run the one. We know Kentucky has options, but just having Cason back, regardless if Cason doesn't go for near triple-double, if he doesn't go for 15 or 16 or 7 or 8 assists, 5 or 6 rebounds, just having that guard on the floor and having his presence out there, I think makes Kentucky a completely different team. I think it makes Kentucky an even better basketball team, regardless of whether or not he's 100% or if he's 85%. But the fact that he was full go in practice, that's a good sign. And I think that being back at full strength, you want, whether you win this game tonight or not, you don't want Cason's first game back being in the NCAA tournament. You want to have a couple of games at least here in Nashville to get the rhythm back in, because look, we saw this last year with this same team. Like, guys hurt, trying to work their way back, and the rhythm never was what? Never was reestablished. So tonight, having Cason back, having CJ there, if Kentucky is at full strength, it's a good sign that they're getting there and trying to get a healthy and get 100% before they get into that tournament that starts next week. So I think it's a big deal.
And it was an interesting note from Coach O. They asked about just how do you manage that? How do you go from, okay, trying to decide, do you not rush him back, but put him in, kind of throw him in with the Sharks to start SEC tournament play, maybe where he's not 100% or at least close to it, versus maybe waiting till tomorrow to play him, assuming you get to tomorrow, wait till Sunday to play him, or just holding him out completely during SEC tournament play and then throw him back in with the Sharks in the NCAA tournament, where a do-or-die situation, chemistry, camaraderie, how does you build so much momentum with what you did and what worked down in Fayetteville, Antonio Reeves playing the point, and Jacob Toppin playing point forward, different things like that. There's a fine line there of trying to reestablish that identity that they had before the injury, but also continuing what was working with him out as well. So it's a tough mindset. But and Coach O's exact quote was, "If he can go, he's got to go."
Well, and here's what I would say about it. Kentucky was excellent in Fayetteville. I mean, they were great. That's a one-game thing. Are you going to get that same effort minus Cason Wallace against Vandy? Probably not. If Kentucky's going to not just win this tournament, if they're going to win the next tournament, you got to have Cason Wallace on the floor. And if he is able to go, you get him out there. He's had over a week off. He's not played since the previous Wednesday. So about what, 9-10 days since he's been out on the floor. You want to establish that rhythm. You want to win this game tonight. I guess my concern would be the late night game and then the quick turnaround to a mid-afternoon game tomorrow. That's where I think that you find out whether or not he is 100%. If you get to tomorrow, if you win tonight and you get to tomorrow afternoon and you get midway through that second half and Kaysen doesn't look phased, then I think Kentucky has no concerns about where they are, whether they win this tournament, they lose tomorrow, or what. It's all about being back at full strength, establishing that rhythm, and getting yourself prepared for that next tournament. The only thing Kentucky's playing for right now, Vandy's playing to get into the next tournament. Kentucky's playing to better themselves and be the best version of themselves when they get into that tournament next week. They're playing for seeding right now. We don't know right now we have no idea where Kentucky's at on the seed line. They could be, I could see them as a 5, I could see them as a 6. I could still see some of the committee looking at them being like, you still have a quad 4 loss, you still have some quad 3 losses, you're a 7. Kentucky can avenge one of those quad 3s tonight and pick up another win against Vandy. And I just think that this is a big game for Kentucky, regardless of opponent, regardless of what's happened. It is one of the hotter teams in the league, and I said this going into the Vandy matchup at Rupp Arena. You want to be playing teams that are going to push you to your brink and to the best right now. And you're getting one this is an elimination game. Vandy's going to treat this like it's an NCAA tournament game because it is.
It is.
And I think that that's going to prepare Kentucky more.
This is their play-in.
Yes, Kentucky is playing a game today that is going to it's going to feel like an NCAA tournament game to the other side. You know what Kentucky should do? Treat it like one.
Yeah.
This is a win-or-go-home mentality because when you get out of this tournament, your season's done if you lose.
Yeah.
So you should treat this thing like, hey, that's a team that's hungry. Let's be hungry too.
How many minutes do you play Kaysen Wallace and CJ Frederick, all those things considered?
I think a lot of it depends on game flow. Obviously, if Kentucky comes out and they're able to rout Vandy, and I don't think that's going to happen, then if they do, then you can probably go less with Kaysen. But I think this is you trust your point guard, you trust your guy, and if he's able to run and go and he is fine, then I think you take him at his word. I think that's the mentality, because if he was able to go full go in practice yesterday, then I'm going to assume that Kaysen Wallace is healthy and he's able to contribute and he's able to get out there and play north of 20 minutes. If he can settle in and play 24, 25 minutes, I think it's ideal. If Kentucky's in a dogfight and you need him to play 33 and he's healthy enough to play 33, you play him 33. It's March and it's time.
That's scary, man.
It is scary, but I'm just saying, I just think that you're to a point here to where if you don't reestablish that rhythm, then you're trying to reestablish in a win-or-go-home environment next week in the NCAA tournament, and that's where you don't want to have to be playing with things. You want to be able to get through tonight, and that's where I think if you trust him, if he's in pain and he can't go, I think that it's going to be a thing where he's going to tell you, hey, I can't. I watched him on the bench that night stand up and try to go. He couldn't go. If he's able to take the floor tonight and play, then I think that you're going to see Kaysen get in north of 20 minutes, and it wouldn't shock me if it's a tight game if Kaysen's playing a ton of minutes down the stretch. But you got to get yourself in form and in rhythm for that next tournament. I get it that it's scary, but if he's able to go full go in practice, then I think that's the cutoff of where. Look, we saw Reed Travis just a few years ago in the NCAA tournament play 40 minutes against Auburn on a knee that we didn't know if he's even going to be able to go.
Forgot about that.
So I just think that it comes down to it, that Cal and player, that relationship, that trust that they've built, if Kaysen is not able to go, and that's the thing that Kaysen has to realize, right? If he's not able to go and he's not at full strength and he's hurting the team, he's got to say, hey, get me out. And I think that's something where you can't be selfish. And I think that Cal trusts Kaysen, and I think Kaysen trusts Cal, and I think the best decision will be made tonight throughout the flow of the game.
And I think that's what happened last week with CJ down in Fayetteville, where the plan was to play him 5 in each half, just say, we got to set the tone, you can start, we'll just get that one extra pass, let's just get the ball moving, and let's kind of set the tone with you in it, and then we'll take it from there. And it worked out perfectly. He played 15 really hard, solid, tough minutes, and ideally he plays a similar number tonight against Vanderbilt. CJ, another 15-minute. But ideally, I think you want Kaysen in that 22 to 25-minute range with a win. If you could, I think best case scenario for this team is you play Kaysen 25 minutes and you win by 8. And you advance, you survive in advance, you look solid doing it. You beat a very impressive Vanderbilt team that's been doing a lot of really, really good things. and you don't push the limit with Kaysen to just kind of kick that can down the road just a little bit more, and hopefully you can kind of have your cake and eat it too, like we saw against Arkansas, where you won without him playing a single minute.
That's the perfect scenario, is if Kentucky can manage minutes with Kaysen and with CJ and get out of here with a comfortable win. That's the perfect scenario. But if it comes down to it, I think John Calipari is going to play to win the game, and I think Kaysen's going to be on the floor late in crunch time if it's a tight game. But if Kentucky can come in here and somehow win by 15 to 20, I don't think that's going to happen. I think Vandy is too good offensively. They're going to score points with Kentucky. Kentucky is the better defensive team when it comes to analytics and Ken Pom. And look, this is the team. I brought it up on the last episode. I'd rather have the more efficient offensive team in March.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The one team that's beaten Kentucky in the stretch was one of the best offensive teams when it comes to efficiency. Mm-hmm. It was the one that was like, I don't know where Vandy's at on Ken Pom. I was looking earlier. They were, let's see here, they're 23rd offensively, 168th defensively. Kentucky's 14th offensively and 67th defensively. Mm-hmm. It's a team that can put up points. They run good stuff. I want to see what Jerry Stackhouse can come up with. Has he been holding back? I don't think so, because this is a team that's fighting for their tourney lives. What did he come up with today? They went small late against Kentucky, and it really hurt Kentucky because Kentucky didn't have any options. They had to go big. They had to go Chris together. They had to go Jacob together. They had to go Oscar on the floor. If Kaysen and CJ are able to go and they're healthy, and if you need a do and you go there, John Calipari at least has options to kind of negate what Vandy does. But I think Oscar Tshiebwe is going to be the focal point early. I want to see how much, and this is where I want to see Kaysen play extended minutes if he's able to, because I want to see what Kentucky does when it comes down to it in crunch time if it's a tight game. Is it Kaysen Wallace with the ball in his hands? Is it Antonio Reeves in some middle ball screen like we saw at Arkansas? I want to see what John Calipari does, because what he does now will tell us a little bit of what he's going to do, not just tomorrow, but in this next tournament as well.
What does Jerry Stackhouse wear tonight?
Ooh. He'll be the best dressed man in the building. There is no doubt about that. So I think we can go with that. If I'm Jerry, I go with what I wore the last time I beat Kentucky, and I don't change a thing about it. That's what I would go with.
It was funny. We did the little KSR prop bets for last night's game going into this one, and I predicted a charcoal gray jacket with the turtleneck, because it's a little chilly in Bridgestone Arena. They have the ice under the floor for the Predators still, so it's a little chilly in there. So I was like, man, I bet he rocks the turtleneck, but we'll see. That's definitely a key point. One of the biggest talking points after the last matchup was Jacob Toppin and kind of the accountability that he had. He really took that loss personally and blamed himself for it. With the way Jordan Wright has been playing for Vanderbilt, the way he dominated that matchup, or at least thoroughly outperformed what Jacob did in that last head-to-head battle, part of me thinks that Jacob will be the key tonight, and he will look at that as all right, if I'm going to hold myself accountable for that loss in that individual head-to-head battle, I think he's going to take that personally in the next time that they play each other and see a really strong response from Jacob.
Jacob is actually my player of the game pick, and I think Jacob is going 20 points tonight.
Yeah,
I do, because I don't know what you're going to get from Kaysen offensively, because when we talk about rhythm, he's not played in a week and a half. I'm not expecting Kaysen to come out here and drop 16 or 17 points, so there's going to have to – and Antonio Reeves isn't going for 37 again. Mm-hmm. Like Oscar Tshiebwe is not going to probably finish with 12. Like he's going to get his. Antonio's going to fall back a little bit. Somebody else is going to have to step up, and I think Jacob's going to get a ton of opportunities to score the ball. Do we see Jacob Toppin in a ball handling role again? Because did Kentucky like what they had there as a pressure release guy? Vandy has some pressure. The first 4 minutes are huge to me tonight. Can Kentucky get this crowd involved in this game early? If they can, then I think it's going to be like an avalanche at some point on top of Vandy. If not, and Vandy can keep that crowd quiet, even though Vandy is in their hometown, it's still a road game for Vandy.
Yeah.
So Jacob Toppin is my player of the game pick, and I think you're spot on. The way that he took that loss, and me and you talked about this, when they walked out on the floor in front of us at senior night, they had a look in their eyes that they're like, I can't believe that we just let that game slip away. It wasn't just Jacob. It was Antonio Reeves. It was Oscar Tshiebwe. Anyone who went through senior night, they felt that. They're getting a shot at redemption, and it's almost like another senior night against Vandy because it's full of Kentucky fans down here tonight.
That's true.
So I think that they're looking at this thing as a shot at redemption, not as much revenge as it is, we let you all off the hook the last time we played. We missed a ton of shots down the stretch. Antonio Reeves, I know, took that game to heart. It was one of the worst shooting performances we'd seen from him. Jacob Toppin blamed himself for that loss. You're going to see the good Kentucky tonight. I really think so.
And this is the storyline that you wanted, because LSU gave Kentucky some trouble to start SEC play. It was the Missouri game, and they needed to respond, and that was the first SEC game following that one. And Kentucky squeaked out the win, but LSU's length and athleticism gave the Cats some fits, and that's kind of what I thought would happen against Vanderbilt for LSU. So part of me was kind of rooting against that matchup, because I did want the storyline. I wanted the revenge factor. I wanted okay, we saw Jacob take that loss to heart and take blame for it. All right, let's see how you respond in that exact same matchup. We saw you respond really well on the road, backs against the wall, desperation factor on Kentucky's side in that one. But how do you do in the exact same matchup against a team that is just as desperate, if not more than you, with their tournament lives hanging on by an absolute thread? I needed this is what we needed. This is the best way to start postseason play for the Cats.
I agree with you. And the LSU game to me would not have been the same level of play from Kentucky, because LSU, I don't feel like was a team that anybody thought could win this league tournament. I actually think that Vandy is a team that can win this league tournament, given the way that they've been playing, and that's what you want to play. Like, I don't want the cakewalk games right now. I want the teams that are going to prepare me for the next tournament, and that is a Vandy, that's a Texas A&M, that's an Alabama, that's a whoever, Missouri. Like these teams that are still remaining in this tournament, some have beaten Kentucky. Kentucky's beaten them, and I think they're all going to give Kentucky tests. And Vandy's one of those teams that Kentucky split 1-1 with this year. Vandy's the better basketball team than LSU. We saw that last night, even though LSU won that game a few weeks ago there at home. But you're getting a test that's going to prepare you for the next tournament, regardless of whether you win this game tonight or not. Vandy was the best opponent, and I'm not getting caught up in winning this tournament this weekend. I'm getting caught up in, I'm taking John Calipari's approach. We're playing this one for the fans. We're playing this to prepare ourselves for the next one. But look, Kentucky's not won this tournament in a while. It's been a bit. I think that John Calipari can probably tell you, it don't mean much. When you've not won it since what, St. Louis? Was that the last time they won it?
Yeah. So, yeah.
So the first year I was on the Kentucky beat. Now this is my 6th year.
Was it 2018?
2018. First year, my first year on the beat, they won this tournament. They've not won it since. You dominated this thing for years. It's time to get back to dominate it again.
This was the Kentucky Invitational for the longest time.
And I really think that this team, given the disappointment that they had for 3.5 months, they have come together through adversity. Well, what better time to show it than in front of your fan base, who gives hundreds or thousands of dollars to travel down here, to stay in hotels, to go to bars, to eat, to pay books for tickets. Listen, you can watch Tennessee fans walk out of this place. You know who's meeting them out here on the street? Kentucky fans wanting what? The remaining tickets that they have. So as this tournament goes along, there's going to be a lot of Kentucky fans in there tonight. If Kentucky wins, there'll be even more in there tomorrow. There'll be even more in there on Sunday. I want to see Kentucky playing its best basketball in a championship setting. Go win this thing. Don't give me when Kentucky wins a national championship, they don't win the SEC tournament. I'm throwing it out. Like they lost to a 15 seed last year. I'm throwing out all of whatever. Just be playing good basketball, have some fun, put on a show for these fans. And I want to see John Calipari coaching his tail off tonight for this team to win a game that doesn't matter when it comes to next week, but it matters in the moment because you're running out of opportunities to better yourself and be the best version of yourself before it really matters.
You brought up the gloriousness that is the Tennessee Volunteers losing down here in Nashville. So many sad Orange Volunteers leaving the stands this afternoon in Bridgestone Arena. Always love seeing that. I could drink those salty tears that they have been shedding. So go away, Vols. Very excited for you to go home. Any other takeaways that you have thus far from the SEC tournament, what we've seen from some of the other teams? We saw Alabama make a pretty significant statement this afternoon, beat the hell out of Mississippi State, and it really wasn't close from start to finish. Mississippi State never led, ended up winning by 24 points or something like that. So Alabama looking the part as the favorite, as you would expect them to. An absolutely terrible press conference from Nate Oates afterward regarding the Brandon Miller situation, and more no commenty stuff from Brandon, just very cringy quotes from Nate Oates. But so that's just from a PR perspective. They butchered that one, but still an absolutely incredible on-court performance for Alabama. Any other teams kind of separate themselves early or scare you, or somebody that could maybe upset Alabama on the other side of the bracket? What are your thoughts?
Well, that top half, right? Like Missouri, that's a team Kentucky did not play well against in December, but gosh,
Destroyed.
that was so long ago. And then Alabama, Kentucky didn't play well against them. So those are two teams that I would like to see Kentucky play, just to see how much Kentucky has gotten better over the course of not just the last 2 months, but the last 3 months since that game against Missouri, or that beat down at the hands of Alabama. So I want Kentucky to advance through this thing. I want to see Kentucky and Vandy. I want to see Kentucky and A&M again.
That'd be fun.
And I want to see Kentucky and Alabama in the final. That's the final that I want, because I want to see, can Kentucky, not just Kentucky, but can Oscar Tshiebwe defend a difficult matchup that has been a thorn in his side since he's been in Lexington, because you don't know what you're going to get matched up with against in that next tournament. I want to see different styles of play attack Kentucky over the course of 3 days, and I think that's the approach to winning this tournament. You're going to see a Vandy team tonight that's going to attack you a certain way. Whoever you play tomorrow, if you advance, is going to be different than what you see tonight. And if you get to Sunday, whoever's there is going to be different than the other two teams that you saw. You're going to see efficient defensive teams. You're going to see efficient offensive teams. It's a different brand of basketball every day, and it's on the fly just like this. That is what prepares you for the NCAA tournament. Don't go one game and out, because one game and out doesn't prepare you, because you know what you're doing then? You're sitting at home waiting to play again, and you got a week off. Play today, play tomorrow, play Sunday, play different styles of play. I think it's going to be Alabama from what we saw today, and I think it's going to be Kentucky. That's my predictions for Sunday. So I'm already going to tell you I think Kentucky's winning tonight, and whoever they play tomorrow, I think Kentucky's winning tomorrow, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. That's the matchup I think everyone wants to see. That's the matchup the league wants to see. And honestly, if Kentucky can right its wrongs from that first matchup in Tuscaloosa, I would feel much better about what Kentucky can do in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a brand new message from a new friend to the show. Today we are welcoming a new sponsor to the Source Say podcast, MyPerfectFranchise.net. Andy Ludicky, a franchise consulting company that helps others find franchises that will fit their needs, skill sets, investment requirements, and time commitment constraints. Andy is a big college sports fan, husband, and father of 3 children. As he says, they are growing up way too fast. You might have seen Andy's name on KSR before, as he sponsors some of our recruiting coverage. Andy is super nice, great to chat with, and we're really excited to continue our partnership with him. Andy is an experienced entrepreneur and has been helping others go through the same process that changed his life 10 plus years ago. If you are wanting to find a way out of corporate America or a way to diversify, please reach out to Andy. He's got a ton of knowledge in this world, and the best of all, his services are 100% free to you. Always nothing ventured, nothing gained. You can learn more and contact Andy anytime at www.myperfectfranchise.net. You kind of alluded to it a couple times, Shawn, who your MVP pick is, but what's your prediction? How do you think tonight's going to go, and what are the keys? Give me 2 quick keys to a victory for the Cats, and what your score prediction is.
Consistency. That's my first word. Is Kentucky needs to be consistent. It needs to be across the board. I want to see Chris Livingston have a good game. He didn't have a good offensive game at Arkansas. We talked a ton about him there over the course of a couple of weeks. I want to be talking about Chris Livingston on the post-game show and whenever we're back doing this again. And I think another key for Kentucky is to string consistent approaches to the game. So like 4-minute stretches. Win the first 4 minutes. Win the second 4 minutes. Just either play even or win. You don't need to, like what hurt Kentucky in the matchup in Lexington was that final 4 minutes of the first half where Vandy out-executed them offensively, and then the first 4 minutes of the second half where Vandy come out and built that 9-point lead, and then Kaysen goes down. It put Kentucky in a hole. I want to see Kentucky play consistent basketball for 40 minutes at full strength. We saw consistent basketball not at full strength at Fayetteville. I want to see them do that with Kaysen on the floor. I want to see them do that with CJ on the floor. I want to see how deep Kentucky goes into that bench tonight.
Yeah,
it's postseason basketball. Who is playing? Who's not playing? They were forced to play a lot of guys in Fayetteville. Is Adu Thiero a part of that mix? Is Lance Ware a part of that mix? We get some question answered now because whoever Kentucky is tonight, if full strength is, I think you can kind of look and see who they're going to be when they get into the next tournament as well. So I think consistency and Chris Livingston, I want to see him have a good game, but Jacob Toppin's definitely my player of the game.
I need that middle eight to be
Bingo.
the winning formula for the Cats. This is where we saw and have seen throughout the year, really, Kentucky's worst games. They have failed in the last 4 minutes of the first half and have crumbled in the first 4 minutes of the second half. Set the tone going into the locker room, give confidence to the other team as they're going through, breakdowns and halftime adjustments and things like that. You don't want to give them that motivation, that confidence, and that momentum at those middle 8 minutes, and that's where things kind of went south in Lexington on senior night. Kentucky struggled in those last 4 minutes, especially that last minute was a disaster, and then opened up a little bit stale in the second half. That's where things have to get fixed. Kentucky was tremendous in the middle 8 down in Fayetteville, and that's where everything kind of went in Kentucky's favor. We saw the emotions get the best of Arkansas, and the technical foul and the ejection and all those sorts of things. That's where we saw Kentucky thrive and really set the tone for the rest of the way, and really they were able to not look back down the stretch. So I think Kentucky needs to solidify that middle 8 and win those two absolutely huge segments, and I'm feeling pretty confident about a win for the Cats.
They're momentum segments. The opening 4 minutes of the game, the closing 4 of the first half, and the opening 4 of the second half. Those are the 3 momentum segments that kind of dictate where you fall. Because if you have a lead going into the half and you build on it, you're in a good spot. If you have a deficit going into the half and you don't do anything in that first 4, then you're putting yourself in a bind in the final 16 to have to claw your way out of it. That's what Kentucky was forced to do at Rupp Arena. They outplayed Vandy down the stretch of that game, but the deficit was too deep to overcome, too steep. And then it got down to who's executing late, who's not executing late. Vandy hit shots, Kentucky didn't. You don't want to have yourself in that situation again where you have to make shots in the final minute or two. Can Kentucky continue to hit free throws? That's another thing. They're getting to the free throw line at a high clip right now. That needs to be a team that continues to do that, but they need to cash in when they get there across the board, whether it be the forwards or the guards. I just think Kentucky's going to come out tonight. I think they're going to play good basketball, and I think they win this game by about 12 points.
Also, keep it simple. Oscar Tshiebwe is a one-of-one individual. Vandy does not have an Oscar Tshiebwe. They don't have a Liam Robbins to complement Oscar Tshiebwe, to counter Oscar Tshiebwe. Beat the hell out of him with Oscar Tshiebwe. It's not that difficult. We saw it when Kentucky was finding its footing against the Vanderbilt Commodores. It was because Oscar Tshiebwe was dominating the way he's fully capable of. And then when things kind of went south, it was when they were not going away from Oscar. Sometimes it's just not that difficult. Just keep it simple, stupid. Play Oscar Tshiebwe, go through him, let him dominate the way he's capable of doing. They do not have a match for him. Let all the other pieces play themselves out. Let Kaysen get his feet wet and get comfortable again. Everything else will work itself out if Oscar is Oscar Tshiebwe tonight. And sometimes it's that simple.
And one other thing that I'm looking for here, if Kaysen is able to go full go, I want to see how Kentucky plays. And I mentioned this earlier about what do they do if they need a bucket. Is it Kaysen with the ball in his hands with Antonio Reeves off the ball? Do they go that floppy action to Antonio Reeves off the baseline? Do they go middle ball screen with Antonio Reeves? Do they post Oscar Tshiebwe? Is it just depending on the scout? I don't know, but I want to see where John Calipari goes. But I also want to see mid-first half if Kentucky throws a wrinkle in here and they run Antonio Reeves with the ball in his hands and Kaysen off the ball. And if Kaysen's not at full strength, you can put him off the ball and not just kind of wearing him into the ground and wear him down. You built something in Fayetteville with the ball in Antonio Reeves' hands. Yep. Do not go completely away from it. You don't have to lean on it because we know that they need this team to be Kaysen Wallace point guard led for them to win a national championship, get to a Final Four. But in his absence, you found something, and I don't want to see a game go by where they don't run middle ball screen for Antonio Reeves. I think getting him involved, running him off some screens, letting him get downhill, get to that floater. If not, read the screen, pop, and drain a three. He is really good off the basketball. We also figured out he's really good on the basketball. Use that to your advantage. Don't be predictable, and let's do some different things tonight. I think Kentucky has options. I think Cal, if they're back to full strength, is going to be happy that he has those options, but also would love to see C.J. Frederick knock down a couple of open threes. I think that would be a huge confidence boost for him and this team. And if Antonio is more on the ball, it also presents the opportunity for Kaysen to become the catch-and-shoot guy that he was, and where he found so much confidence earlier on and momentum earlier on as a three-point specialist, and that kind of died down a little bit when his
usage went up as an on-ball guy and having to be a playmaker and a facilitator rather than focusing on his energy and efforts into being a catch and shoot guy. So that could also kind of go hand in hand with Antonio. If he's comfortable in that role, then let Kaysen do what he's good at doing and as kind of a slasher role instead. So a lot of reasons to be excited, but it is a very difficult matchup for the Cats tonight and one that I'm certainly looking forward to. Score prediction. I'm going 76-71 Cats. No, 76-67 Kentucky wins to advance to the SEC semifinals.
Let me ask you this before I give you my score prediction. Do you want to see Kentucky go off offensively, or do you want to see them lock in defensively against a good offensive team?
If you could, similar in that scoring margin where you're not exploding for 90, but if you can go for 75-ish while holding them to one of their lowest point totals in a minute, I mean, I think that's about as best case scenario as you could ask for.
I'm going to go 79-67 Kentucky. I think you got a close game throughout, but I think Kentucky hits shots, hits free throws down the stretch. I think Kentucky has a lead going into that under 8 media timeout by about 4 or 5 points, and I think they push it out and win by 12.
Well, we'll see. Kentucky set to tip off here in just a couple hours. We will be there live from the arena, and we'll do our normal rapid reaction on the YouTube page then, and then tomorrow we'll do our, assuming all goes well, we'll do a post game no matter what. We'll do that tomorrow morning at some point, hopefully leading up to a semifinals matchup against. We'll find out that very shortly as well. So more from us here very, very shortly live from Nashville. Appreciate you guys tuning in and listening to us and watching. As always, great feedback on the show as always. Sean, let's get out of here. Where can fans find your work?
You can find my work at gobigbluecountry.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at GBBCountry.
Find me on Twitter as well at Jack Pilgrim KSR. Reach out to me via email, jpilgrim@KentuckySportsRadio.com. With that, we'll be back next time for the Jam Packed Source State podcast. We will see you then.